Let's rewind to just a few days ago. On Monday, we learned from reporting coming out of CHGO's Will Gottlieb that the Bulls had in fact received multiple offers that included multiple first-round picks in exchange for Alex Caruso at this past season's trade deadline, which of course the Bulls declined, the reason being a mandate from ownership for the Bulls to continue to push for the playoffs. And while a lot of us Bulls fans were up in arms to learn that kind of deal the Bulls could have gotten for their two-time all-defensive team player, all but to pass on said opportunities that would lead to the Bulls missing the playoffs anyway. But little did we know that just 3 days later, after nearly 2 years of the Bulls fan base trying to push to trade their most valuable trade asset, we would learn that the Bulls finally let go of the heart and soul of this team in trading away Alex Caruso for the Oklahoma City Thunder's Josh Giddey. And that was it. A straight trade of Caruso for Josh Giddey. And while I'm still trying to process this trade hours after the news broke, and yes, part of me is still not really sure how to feel about it, overall, I can honestly say this was a pretty lousy trade deal for the Bulls, especially when you consider what was on the table in a potential Caruso deal and what they ultimately got in return, and the fact that they weren't able to pry a single draft pick away from the Thunder, not even a measly second-round pick from a team that has the biggest stockpile of draft picks in the NBA. But here's the thing, while it's easy to look at this trade in a vacuum and see why the Bulls lost the trade deal, which I'll get into why, it's also easy to be reactionary in the early aftermath of a single trade before we see how the rest of the offseason pans out, because I would venture to say this is likely just the first move of many other moves the Bulls will be making this offseason to implement change to this roster. But either way, in this video, we're going to be breaking down the good and the bad of this trade for the Bulls and what it potentially means for what's to come for the rest of this offseason. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, you guys probably saw my very brief initial reaction video to the breaking news, but when this news first broke, seeing the Woj bomb come through with Alex Caruso's name on it, my heart instantly dropped a bit before I even saw the name of who it was attached to in terms of who they're going to be trading with. But I think you guys all know AC has been one of my favorite players on this team. I love everything he does on the court. The definition of grit, grind, hustle, makes winning plays, and he fits to a T of what you want to see in Chicago basketball. But at the same time, I also knew that it was kind of inevitable that we could see a Caruso trade this offseason, given all the rumors, the Bulls' current state that they find themselves in, where they're in no man's land, and knowing that Caruso's value around the league would get them a very good return for a role player. A great role player, but a role player, and he's in his 30s. So when I saw Josh Giddey included in the deal, I immediately thought, okay, what else? Because sometimes, you get the Woj bombs or the Shams bombs, although Woj has actually kind of been beating up on Shams recently with breaking news, but they get these initial tweets out so they can be the first to report on it, and then they'll follow it up with a tweet giving more specifics in the deal and what else is included, namely any draft picks. And so I waited and waited, and I kept saying to myself, well, there's no way this is a straight up trade for Josh Giddey, especially when it's the Thunder and they have so many draft picks at their disposal. They have to have at least gotten one first round pick in the deal. And I kept waiting and waiting, and it never came through. And sure enough, the trade was just for Josh Giddey. Now, if you caught my recent video, I had talked about part of the reason for my reluctance in trading Caruso is because I felt the Bulls were going to sell lower on him than they should have. I just felt like unless you were getting a really good return, a big haul for Alex Caruso, it probably wasn't worth trading a guy, and you might as well extend him and trade him down the line because there will be interest in him throughout the league even come next season. And sure enough, my fears became a reality. Because don't get me wrong, Josh Giddey is a fine player and he's young with upside, but if this is the return you opted for instead of multiple first round picks, this is straight up front office malpractice. And look, I said before, we don't truly know what the offers were. We don't know what the protections on the picks that were offered near the deadline were. And you could argue maybe the picks weren't that valuable overall. And at least with Josh Giddey, they know they're getting an established player who was the number 6 pick in the 2021 draft. But regardless, what I find most concerning is AK clearly seeing Josh Giddey's flaws on full display in the playoffs this past season, so bad to the point that he was nearly taken out of the rotation and having a very minimal role in the postseason. And he decides, yeah, I want that. I'm going to use my best trade asset to get this guy, even if it means not having additional draft picks to go with it. Like, Caruso is coming off his best season of his career, having his best offensive season combined with his elite level defense, and doing all of this on one of the best contracts in the NBA. While Josh Giddey is coming off His worst season, granted he's only been in the league for 3 years, but his worst season and a big time regression in his 3rd year, which is a bit of a red flag. And he's going to be coming up for a rookie contract extension, so you either are going to have to pay him or he potentially leaves in free agency next season, and then you give up Caruso for 1 year of Josh Giddey. And so I guess I'm already kind of going into the negatives, but let's start with the cons. Well, of course, aside from not getting any kind of draft capital in the deal, but as it relates to the downsides of Josh Giddey, well, number one, he can't shoot. The Bulls desperately need shooting, and you just traded away one of your best shooters from this past season who shot over 41% from 3, while Josh Giddey has shot 31% from 3 on his career. He's not a good defender. You're going to lose a lot of defense in shipping out Caruso for Giddey. And then the biggest thing that gets me, which is why you have to think other moves are coming, I just don't see the fit. There are certain aspects of the fit that I like, which I'll get to in talking about the pros of this trade, but you're talking about adding another ball-dominant guard who is at his best when he has the ball in his hands, and it's part of the reason why he struggled last season playing alongside SGA. But another guard like that with DeMar DeRozan, another player who can't space the floor and hit threes, and another player who can't defend. I mean, the lineup of Josh Giddey, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic, watching that is going to make me want to gouge my eyes out. That has the worst 3-man net rating in the league written all over it for this upcoming season, which is why you'd have to think again, there are more moves coming, because if this is the quote-unquote big move of the offseason for the Bulls, and AK makes this as the play to stay competitive, thinking that somehow Giddey is going to take on that Lonzo Ball role and replicate what the Bulls were doing at the beginning of 2021, then oh boy, this trade becomes that much more worse if there are not subsequent moves to follow it. Because Giddey alone, and keeping the rest of the roster as is arguably worse from a roster construction standpoint than what the Bulls had last season, which is pretty hard to do and making it worse at this point. Now, the last piece I'll say as it relates to the downsides of this trade, I'm not going to touch on this too much, but of course, the off-court stuff with Josh Giddey evidently dating an underage girl. Obviously, he wasn't found of any wrongdoing, and that whole case has been closed, but that's also not the best look. And you could tell that was having an effect on him last season and could be part of the reason for his struggles last year, when I'm sure that weighed on him mentally, especially when the investigation was still ongoing. Now, as it relates to the pros of this trade, the glass half full side and looking at this deal so Bulls fans don't go into the pits of despair after the trade, one, you should be encouraged that the Bulls are actually making moves, making real changes. Two, as I said before, a move like this likely signals more moves to come. I mean, one thing that Woj called out when he broke the news, but the assumption of bringing in a player like Giddey is that the Bulls are probably conceding that Lonzo isn't going to be coming back or won't be close to the same level of player he used to be. You might even see a potential buyout on the final year of his deal or waiving and stretching his contract. 3, for Giddey's flaws, he actually does have a lot of positive aspects to his game. He's a pretty versatile player in that he can play positions 1 through 4, good size. It's nice that the Bulls have finally added a player that is taller than 6'5", handles the ball well, good court vision, solid passing, good rebounder for a guard. He's a triple-double threat, finishes decently well at the rim. And while I mentioned, the issue of fit, the one aspect I do like when it comes to him fitting with this roster is that the Bulls have needed a floor general, a playmaker for a while now, ever since Lonzo Ball got injured. And so for the Bulls, I mean, Giddey is going to have the ball in his hands. Will have more freedom to control the floor. Well, again, kind of assumes DeMar maybe wouldn't be coming back. And to me, this could actually benefit Coby White. Because even though Coby improved his handles, his playmaking, his shot creation last season, I think most will agree Coby is more effective and lethal playing off the ball. And with Josh Giddey, you would hope he's going to be getting better looks with a good playmaking guard. And of course, Coby will still have the ball in his hands from time to time, but he won't be expected to be the primary ball handler on a nightly basis. And then finally, Josh Giddey's young. He's only 21 years old, still has upside potential and having not even reached his prime yet. I don't think he has all-star potential like Woj said in his tweet, but it is an opportunity to buy low on a player who's coming off a down year where he saw a drastic decrease in his usage because of the ascendance of SGA. Maybe a new environment, a change of scene could work out well for him. And maybe, just maybe, he can improve that shot. I'm not going to hold my breath though on that one, although Peter Patton did do wonders for Dosunmu. Let's see if he can replicate that for Josh Giddey. The one thing that does give me hope that he can improve his shot is that he shot 80% from the free throw line this past season, which usually, not all the time, but usually if a player can shoot free throws on a solid clip, they can, with the proper training and development, eventually develop a jump shot. So yes, there are some things I like about this trade, but I would say there are more things that I don't like about it. And part of it is because I really didn't want to see Caruso go. Not like this. I'm very happy for him though, because this is the ideal situation for Alex Caruso, playing for a contender, a team that needs a lockdown perimeter defender. I love this trade for OKC. They have to be smiling from ear to ear that they were able to get one of the best defenders in the NBA who can shoot threes on a cheap contract and not have to give up picks to get him. I feel like I'll potentially like this trade more depending on the moves that follow this one. But if this is it though, this is the move of the offseason, then no, this trade becomes even that much more worse. But regardless, let me know what you guys thought on the trade. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.